All right, let's get right to it. Strength Society. This is week 9. If you made it to this point, I'm sure you guys are doing awesome. You should be feeling pretty good. All right, so today we're going to talk about advanced technique and breaking plateaus, right? And signs of why you're hitting a plateau. All right, so let's dig into a little bit. So let's go on to what we're going to talk about first, which is our advanced techniques. And specifically, we're going to talk about squats, deadlifts, and bench, as well as some different unique unilateral progressions for unilateral exercises. All right, and we're going to talk about proper core embracing and grip strength and a little bit more. All right. So first, let's go ahead and talk about squat variations. As you know, squats give you most bang for your buck in building your leg strength and muscle. Let me move my head over here so you have some clear visuals here. All right, so there are many handful of variations here that, as far as squatting, will definitely provide some variety and keep your workouts fresh, but also keep you leveling up. All right, so the first one here, we're going to start with the most progressive approach to squatting is the front squat. All right, so here, see the girl here performing a full squat with the barbell resting on the front of the shoulders, and she's keeping her arms up and keeping the bar in place onto the shoulders, so that way the bar and the weight is being supported with by the body. Okay, so this is probably the most advanced squat you can do, because this will demand great mobility of your knees, your ankles, your upper back, and your hips. All right, so you're not limited to just the barbell when you're doing this exercise. You can utilize dumbbells for starters to get comfortable with it and to see how well you can hold a weight up above your shoulders or on your shoulders. Because usually for most people, they can't do this because they lack strength in the upper body to sustain the weight onto the shoulders. So starting with the barbells a dumbbell will be a good place to start. And as you get comfortable with it, and you can start with the barbell. But that's the front squat also will strengthen your core and your quadriceps. Would also it'll put on less compressive force on your lower back, as well as on your knees. So this is a great squat as far as carryover value to a lot of sports, especially if you in a sport where you like to run or sprinting, or actually in many other sports where it requires a lot of anterior strength and force development. The front squats is the way to go. All right. Let's move on to the next one. Is the hack squat. This is an old school method to perform, and it's also very awkward. You don't see many people doing this exercise at gyms, but this is a very valuable exercise. It's one of my favorites, though I would admit it's not my strongest lift, but it's also very effective to provide balance to your quadriceps and overall strength. And as you can see, it's kind of a hybrid between a squat and a deadlift, because the barbell is placed behind you, but you're also gripping it as a deadlift. All right, and you can see the guy's foot is elevated, so that way it makes it easier to go throughout the range of motion and not have to rely so much on your hips and mobility. So, but also put way more engagement of your upper portion of your quadriceps, whereas most squats, they put way more focus on the lower ratio of your quadricep muscles around the knees. So this kind of provides good balance. And this also keeps you very honest with your form and technique, because you have to keep a nice erect position in order to have a smooth transition from the bottom and when you rise back up. All right, so this is a really great one. I might throw in a video in here for you guys to check it out so you get a nice visual of that. And let's go ahead and move on to the heels elevated squats. This is not too advanced, but you can do this with pretty much any variation of a squat. If you're doing a dumbbell, you're doing a back squat, front squat, kettlebells, goblet squat, you name it. But the heels elevation, just again, if you're having trouble with low back or hip mobility, this will help you get into a deeper range of motion. It also puts less stress and emphasis on your back, but also it'll make it easier to really focus on your quadriceps if that's the focus. But it's also a very, very handy tool to get in. You can pretty much use anything you may have, like a 2x4, some books, even some dumbbells or some plates if you have it. But this is a great variation to mix things up. All right. So let's go ahead and move on to the next bench variation, which this is also very important to vary your torso game. So we'll start with the closed grip press. This is very identical to a regular chest press, except your hand position are a bit more narrow. Either your hands are aligned with your shoulders or inside in line with your clavicle. All right. And this position will put way more emphasis on your triceps and your anterior shoulder. And you can do this in an incline as well. So this is a great one to kind of mix in if you want to focus more on triceps. This is your go-to right here. And you can also do it with dumbbells too. All right, and the next one will be, I wouldn't say a technique, it's more of an approach to emphasize different portion of the lift. So say partial range of motion. For this particular one, depending on the individual and where you have the most trouble in your press, for some people, they may be very strong at the bottom, so they start off coming from off the chest, but once they get at the halfway mark going up, then they struggle, and it's kind of a slow, sticky phase of the lift for them, where in that case, you want to focus on the top half of the range of motion for you to perform this as smooth as possible. All right, but you can overcome any of the sticky areas and weaknesses in that particular portion of the range of motion. And it's vice versa too. If you're sticky at the bottom, then you want to focus on partial range of motion on your lifts and come up halfway and down. Okay, or throw in some isometrics. But it's that simple. Okay, and then you have your 1.25 rep. Which is basically just kind of adding more time on the tension. So you're going to come down all the way down to your chest. You're going to come up a quarter of the way up, come back down, and then you're going to complete the rep by driving the weight all the way back up to that starting position. And then you're going to repeat. Okay, you're coming down at a quarter, back down, and then all the way up. So you just it's kind of like a little pulse at the bottom before you drive up, and it's going to increase the more time on the tension and give you most bang for your buck. All right. And that's one you can play with. And the last but not least is your incline press, which for most people tend to be 20% weaker on the incline than compared to the flat press. So you're going to be a lot stronger in your flat bench than you are on your incline, because this will emphasize on the upper pectoral region and the shoulders. So for a lot of people, they don't put a lot of emphasis in that. So it definitely gives you most bang for your buck in that proportion, so that way you can improve your strength in your other lifts. And believe it or not, it can actually improve in your pull-up game, because believe it or not, those muscles are also engaged in your pull-ups. So that's one. If your pull-up game, if you want to improve your pull-up game, then this is the one you want to make sure you invest some time in. All right. And of course, you can use barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever you have. All right. And then the last variations here will be the deadlift, right? If you want a superior posterior chain, you want a nice, strong hamstring, glutes, and your whole back, then these are some exercises you want to make sure you mix in for variety of sake, because the deadlift alone is not enough to take you where you want to go. All right. So you have here the deficit deadlift. The only time this really plays a factor is when you're using bumper plates. And usually, when you're using bumper plates like this, especially they're pretty big, they take up a lot of real estate, so it kills your range of motion. So if you want more depth in your deadlift, then being up on a box about 4 to 6 inches will be good for you to get a deeper range of motion on your lifts while still lifting some heavy shit around. All right. So that's that, and it's not limited to just a hex bar. You can do a barbell. You can even do dumbbells too. So there's no limit to how you can use that. The next one is a snatch grip deadlift. It's probably one of the most challenging ones. As you can see, your grip here is a lot wider to show the width. And you can probably guess that the most taxing part of this is your grip, but over time you'll get stronger. Okay, but this is definitely advanced. But also a hell of a way to engage your scapular muscles and your lats. So it puts a lot more emphasis on the upper back in this particular lift, and also stresses a bit more technicality with your hips for this particular movement. All right. And then last here is Romanian deadlift. So if you watched week 3 or week 4, I believe we shared a breakdown of how to do a deadlift. It's very similar to this, except you're only traveling at a certain range of motion. So as you see in the picture, you're only bringing the barbell below the knee, or in some cases above the knee. Okay, you only focus on the top half of the range of motion for a deadlift. And for a lot of people, this is where they get it wrong, and they put a lot of force and compression into the lower back. So definitely go back and watch that video. Unless you have it down, then these are a great one to mix in. You can do it for heavy lifts, high reps, for endurance, it doesn't matter, but this is a great way to implement into your lifting game. All right, and I'm sure some of y'all may have experienced these already in some of our workouts. All right, so let's move on. So for any of these, if you haven't tried them, go ahead, give them a try. Even mix them up in your warm-ups. So if you're doing legs or something, do something that's related to your legs that's going to carry over to your actual working sets, or same thing with your torso exercises. All right. All right, and then the next one is unilateral progressions. All right, let's dig into this a little bit. This requires it's more of a strategy as far as execution goes, to kind of give you some variations, because otherwise a single limb exercise is a single limb exercise. It's just changing your approach on this. So the first one here we're going to talk about is static lifts. All right, and one of my favorites here is I'm going to use the chest press as an example. So we're going to do an alternate limb chest press. So you're basically starting with, you're actually using dumbbells for this. So you start with a chest press position at the top, and then you're going to lower one dumbbell at a time. Okay, while the other arm is perfectly extended in that position. All right, and when you're counting these, is usually you do your left and then your right side. That counts as one rep, and then you do that until you complete your given rep scheme. Okay, and that's another great one to help prolong more time in the tension and make it a bit more challenging. And then the next one's a multiple tier pause method, which you can do these. Excuse me. You can do these at with a bilateral movement, like a compound exercise, but in this case we're just going to focus on the chest press, but we're using a single limb. So in this case we're doing a 3 pause tier. So focusing on the lower portion, you're going to pause 3 times for whatever a given time. So I'm going to say 3 seconds. So I'm going to come down a quarter. I'm going to rest for 3. Come down halfway. Rest for 3. Oh my goodness. And then I'm going to the bottom, and I'm going to rest for 3. Okay. And then I'm going to drive up. And then I'll repeat that for 3 to 5 reps. This method, because it takes up so much time, and it places the muscle for a lot of tension, then you want to make sure you keep the reps low and focus more on the strength aspect of this too. Believe it or not, it can actually serve as a functional hypertrophy, but it depends on how it's put together. All right, but these are great strategies to implement to mix it in your routine, which you'll probably find these in some of the workouts, if not future workouts. All right, so the next one we're doing a tandem pairing. This one's pretty simple. You're basically pairing one exercise with another with the same limb. So let's say we'll do the legs for a second. Let's say we're doing a reverse lunge, right, and a step up. Right, so I'm going to start with my left leg. I'm going to do 12 reps with my left leg, and then I'm going right into the step up with the same leg, the left leg, and do 12 reps there. And then I'll switch to my right side and do the same thing. I'll do 12 reps on the right, and then 12 reps with the step ups, right, going back and forth. And this would definitely get you sweating, but also accumulate a lot of fatigue. But it's also very advanced. So if you're feeling confident with this, definitely this is a great approach to give it a shot. All right. And then the next one's pairing with a major lift. All right. So you're pairing a unilateral exercise with a big movement exercise. So in this case, a chest press. So I use external rotation with a chest press. So basically you're doing a superset. So you're doing external rotation for your reps, and then you make sure you do on both sides. And then on your second set for the second exercise, you're going to do your chest press together. But you got to make sure you do the unilateral exercise first. Okay, so for this one, it's just really to tax the stabilizer muscle, which we'll talk into in a second, more in depth. But it just kind of condition them a bit more and get them stronger over a period of time. All right, but these are just different methods you can play with. But there's way more out there. But for now, this is good. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. The next thing we'll talk about is core muscles, right? The ins and outs. But first, let's talk about what they're all about. All right, and what are they, and what muscles are we talking about here? All right, so right now, many people equate to the term core with a six-pack, right? But the anatomy of the core is more complex than you realize, right? Your abs alone include 4 abdominal muscles, and then there's all your back muscles to account for it too. All right, those act as part of your stabilizers in your trunk. All right, so you have your rectus abdominis, you have your external and internal obliques, transverse abdominis, and your rectus spinae, and you have other muscles like the multifidi and spinae and all that. And then your hip muscles and glutes also contribute to core stabilization, but not quite as much as the muscles that I just mentioned. All right, so those are the ones you want to really be mindful of when you're doing any type of core exercise and what purpose you want it to serve when you're doing some of these exercises. So, but first I want to talk about core bracing, right? As you can see, there are a good amount of muscles that are involved to engage in your core, right? It's not as simple as it seems, but once you learn how to use them properly, you'll find yourself surprised at how much stronger you can become in your lifts, like your squats and your deadlifts, right? Or any other power or strength exercise. Plus, you'll soon realize that you don't always have to rely on a stability belt if you do use one. Okay, stability belt, if you don't know what it is, it's just basically this large leather belt that you place around your waist to kind of provide more support and trunk. But for me, I kind of see it as a crutch if you use it all the time. I'm not a proponent against it. I really think it's very beneficial, but only if you're hitting like your max point is where you feel like I feel like you definitely should use it. But otherwise, if you can, as much as possible, just use your core. Right, it's a natural stability belt. All right. All right, so moving on, there are many signs that that you're not bracing correctly, and here are a few things. Right, one is an excess arching of the lower back when pressing or while you squat or deadlift. Right, your back is arched, your butt sticks out, and you're putting all that force into your back. Right, or your lower back sinks as you hold a plank. Right, that's pretty obvious. Or you lose balance when you lunge. Right, and these are the obvious ones. These are the ones that normally stick out for a lot of people, but that's just to name a handful. Okay, but we can talk more in depth if that's an issue with you. You can always record a video, post it in the group, let us know how things are going. All right, and then we're moving on to see how we do it. Learn how to brace the right way. All right, you know how to engage that core. So in all lifts, it's important to brace and tighten all core muscles to keep your spine safe and stable. Right. I mean, I don't mean sucking in your stomach either, right? You want to picture your whole trunk and your pelvis as a cylinder, right? Really tight. But how we do that, you may ask? Well, here's how we're going to do it. First, you start by taking a deep breath, right? You tighten all your abdominal muscles while inflating your stomach, right? There's a difference between sucking it in and inflating, right? And making it tight. You want to fill your stomach with air pressure and pushing it down like you're holding your breath, okay? But the degree of pressure applied will be based on the intensity of your lift, right, and the fatigue, right? You should always feel the pressure above your pelvis, not towards your spine, all right? I'm going to give you a nice diagram here of what I'm talking about, right? So you can see here, when you're doing it abnormally, right, you're sucking in and you're putting all that pressure into your spine, whereas you're just putting abdominal pressure here, right? You're putting the pressure here and it's stabilizing the muscles here. Yeah, there's muscles here engaged just to help support your abs for supporting the load, but the force shouldn't be relied and pressed upon your lower back, because long term, that's a big no-no, right? You're going to hurt yourself. And then here, give a nice example here, where you're starting with like a back squat. Make sure you brace before you go down. So you're taking a big inhale, and then you go to the bottom with control, with your tempo. You hold your breath. Make sure that you're stabilizing your trunk, keeping your pelvis braced, keeping your tailbone down, and then you're going to drive up without breaking that tension and air pressure, and then you exhale once you're about halfway up, and then you kind of repeat. And of course, your breathing pattern may vary once you get to a more fatigue state or the weight gets heavier, okay? But that never changes as far as the rhythm of your breath and the whole breath hold and stabilizing that pressure, keeping the weight on the heels, okay? I know it's easier said than done, but if you need some more advice, then we can talk about that more in depth at a later time. All right, but that's basically what that looks like, okay? Now I'll talk about grip strength, okay? And this is another one that you definitely want to make sure that you improve upon, right? So if you lift weights regularly, it will normally improve your grip strength to a certain point, for sure, hands down, right? You'll definitely get a lot stronger. But when your grip isn't forced to work harder and get better, it limits how much you can strengthen your grip. So either you're dealing with a weak grip or forearms, improving your grip strength is a low-hanging fruit to help you improve all your lifts. So you want to make sure that you improve your grip. Okay, so if your pull-ups is your goal, you want to make sure you improve your grip because that will influence your ability to do so. All right, so let's jump into some methods that you can do, some approaches. So you can do some dead hangs from a bar, right? You just hang it from a bar, and you can do it for time if you have a bar at home or at the park. That's a great way to do. You can pretty much do it anywhere. Hold dumbbells. You just basically hold them to your side. Some nice heavy dumbbells if you have it. You do that for time. You can pinch if you have access to plates. You can pinch the plates for your finger strength and do it for time. You can do farmer walks, wrist curls, and reverse curls, which you can utilize with dumbbells. Don't have to be too heavy, but just you can gain the repetition to help strengthen your wrist muscles. And then basic reverse and hammer curls are all great to strengthen your forearm muscles. All right, if you have dumbbells, awesome. Definitely utilize these. Don't overlook these. It's pretty easy. You can do them anytime, anywhere. Okay. Like I said, all of these can be done either as a warm-up, not to the point where it kind of interferes with your actual sets, but just kind of warm them up if your workout's really, especially if it involves like deadlifts or pull-ups or anything like that. You want to make sure that they're all warmed up, ready to go. Or you can do it as a finisher, some of these as a finisher at the end of your workouts, just to kind of smoke your forearms, and then, over time, they'll get stronger and conditioned. All right, so if you have any questions, let me know about this. And the next thing we're talking about is busting through plateaus. All right. So first, we're going to talk about the reasons for hitting a plateau. All right, and how that's going to impact your body. All right, we're talking about the nervous system, either the muscles that fall or the stabilizing muscles. So the nervous system, right? The CNS fatigue is basically a condition where you won't be able to produce high force or recruit high levels of muscle activation. All right. Therefore, it will hinder your performance in hitting a plateau. Okay. And this happens when your training lacks proper recovery and intensity reduction. All right. So, if you're doing like HIIT workouts or high intensity, or you're doing cardio all the time, or even doing CrossFit, doing the wall workout for the day, and you're just trashing your body all the time, your body can only sustain that for so long. Okay, until your nervous system because your nervous system needs six times longer to recover and allow your body to improve at its highest performance. But if you don't give it enough time to recover or regulate your intensity, you're going to hit a plateau. And no matter how hard you're going to push, you're going to feel like crap. Okay, your nervous system will fight you. It doesn't matter how hard you work, you're not going to get better. Okay, any athlete will tell you recovery is crucial. Right, your nervous system will be the first to tell you. Right, there are a lot of symptoms for that too. All right, so definitely your nervous system can be taxed. So if you're not taking the proper recoveries from the earlier videos that we talked about, please do so. All right. The next cause can be, has maybe something to do with your muscle, right? Maybe you're trying to build strength or you're trying to build muscle, but you hit a plateau. right? So maybe one of the issues can be tension. You're not placing enough tension on the muscles, okay? Which if you don't, that can easily stunt your muscle growth or strength, right? So if you're not applying yourself enough, you're only going to get only so far with your results, all right? Or strength, right? If you're, I say poor planning here, but if you're following that workouts, it's definitely not poor planning. Are you applying progressive overload? Same thing with ties in with tension. Are you applying enough weight to challenge you, right? And that usually comes down with the mindset behind it, right? Which we've talked about in different videos. Or bad form. Believe it or not, if you have bad lifting technique, and you're only going a certain range of motion, it will impact how well developed or strength your muscles are going to develop over time. All right? Or you're doing too much cardio, right? If you're trying to build muscle or build strength, cardio should not be in the forefront of your training program, right? You should be lifting 3 to 4 times a week, right? Cardio should be added on the back end, like on the side or your active recovery days, but it shouldn't be, the main focus, right? 'Cause believe it or not, it's detrimental to your results. If you're trying to build muscle or build strength, cardio should not be your main emphasis. All right, you can still lose weight or build muscle without it. Okay, and yeah, I'm sure in other videos we'll talk about different ways to hit cardio without compromising your strength or muscles. All right, so next thing we'll talk about is weak stabilizers, right? I know this is not the first thing that pops in people's mind as an underlying problem, but in fact, this could be an issue, right? There are 2 types of muscles on the body, right? Movers and stabilizers. And we talked about this on one of the previous unilateral progressions, right? A mover muscle allows you to perform your chest press, for example, right? The chest press exercise, that's a mover, right? A stabilizer muscle assists the larger muscle to perform the press, like the external rotation, okay? So the external rotation is the stabilizers. The prime mover are your chest muscles, okay? So if your stabilizers are weak, then your pec muscles are going to only do so much. It can only go so far. You can only press so much weight, okay? If they're weak, they're the first ones to shut down. No matter how well conditioned, how strong you may think, they will prevent you from getting any stronger or taking it to the next level. All right. So strengthening your stabilizing muscles might not give you, the reason to show off your beach body, but it will surely bulletproof your body from injury and break through any plateaus. All right. So do not skip any of these small remedial accessory exercises. All right, because it could be one of the underlying factors. Okay. But it doesn't mean you have to give up, right? Man, my goodness. See, when I talk too much, my voice gets raspy here. But just here's some ways that you can progress, okay? So you can make some adjustments in your training, like tempo. You can add isometrics, rest, progressive overload, adding a deload week, and all that jazz. I'm sure you heard some of these in some previous videos, but we're going to break it down a little bit more. Okay, so tempo, you guys should be well aware of what tempo is all about, because if you're doing our programs, you know damn well we incorporate tempo. All right, so tempo is weight training, is the rhythm of which you move the weight, including the rest time at the top of the lifts and at the return of the weight to the starting position. So as you can see, you guys will be very familiar. The 4, say we're doing the chest press here again. The 4 reps. The 4 stands for how long it takes you to lower the weight. The 0 is the bottom number. There's no pause, so you just go right into the concentric, the pushing portion, which should take you 2 seconds to lift. And then 0 is at the top. There's nothing, so you're going to go right back down to 4 seconds, come up with 2, come down with 4, come up with 2, and then until you do your given rep scheme. Okay? So tempo training has a lot of benefits, as you probably have experience already, right? You have controlled movement, right? You can be a master of your body, right? You're moving mindfully, right? With good technique and with good control. And not only you're training the muscle, but you're also training the nervous system to be more efficient in recruiting muscles and moving at a certain range of motion and firing rate, okay? And most importantly, you're going to maximize time under tension, because this does influence the type of muscle fibers that you're actually working and engaging. So the more you can tap into these different muscle fibers, the much stronger you're going to become and better you're going to build muscle. Okay, and most importantly, you're going to build way more confidence controlling and pushing some weight around. All right, that's it for the tempo. And then isometrics. In simple terms, a static position where muscle length does not change. Right, the isometrics can be utilized in two different ways. Right, one is pushing against an immovable object, or two, by pausing at a specific point during an exercise lift. So if you guys ever taken like a class or maybe a YouTube class and you've done some halfway pauses, I'm sure some of y'all experienced to some extent some isometric movements. All right, this can be done with nearly any lift that uses a bar or a dumbbell or just your body weight. Right, it's good to be utilized different joint angles to improve strength near the specific range of motion where the isometric muscle actions happen. All right, so going back into pushing against an immovable object, one thing that comes to mind is doing a push-up underneath a barbell. So basically you set a barbell on pins, right, on a rack, where and then you go under the bar and you have room to do your push-up, but maybe to a halfway mark, till your body meets the bar and you're pressing against the bar and holding it for whatever, a certain period of time, and then coming back down, do a push-up, coming up, pushing, hold it for an extended period of time, and then you can repeat that. So that's basically what the immovable object is all about. And then, of course, the second one is just holding a specific point, like the picture here is holding a squat in a halfway mark, okay? But these are some different ways to kind of, again, play with time under tension and challenge the muscles in a different way, okay, and create a nice potentiation effect. All right, the next one is rest, okay? You'll be surprised at how easily a person can overwork their bodies, thinking they'll lose more weight, get stronger, or become faster, but simply that's not the case. All right, workouts need to be planned around several rest days. All right, bodies need to recuperate, and if the body doesn't come out of that continual training, the system does not have time to catch up and start patching everything back up. All right. Plus, your muscles grow on the rest days. I repeat, your muscles grow on the rest days, not when you're just working out. All right, and that's something that can be tied into earlier what we talked about. So we always highly recommend at least 1 day of rest a week, or maybe a couple, 2 or 3 days. But you want to make sure that you incorporate rest time. All right, and you also have your active rest days too, which is totally fine. But again, not going AWOL, not going, doing CrossFit every single day, and just not sustainable. All right. And then the next one, progressive overload. Are you adding enough weight over time? All right. So I'll give you an example here, right? So week 1, you're doing, say for a chest press, you're doing 135 pounds for 10 reps. Week, you stay with the same weight. You're like, okay, I want to build some confidence. Boom, you hit it for 10 reps. I'm like, all right, now I'm feeling a little bit more confident. Now you're at week 3, like let's step it up, 10 more pounds. So now you're at 145 and you do 10 reps. You're like, whoa, that was a bit more challenging, And then you go to week 4 with the same weight, but then you got really confident and you did 2 more reps, right? And that's just one example of, a progressive overload. But typically, I'll give you another example here. Is typically you want to say you start at 135 pounds, right, for 10 reps. You're like, oh, okay. But the second week, maybe you jump it up to 140 pounds, right? And you did 10 reps. You're like, oh, okay, that was a bit more challenging. And then here you jumped up to 145 pounds, but you only did 9 reps, right? It was way challenging, but you only were able to do 9. You were short by 1. Right? Like, okay, I'm going to stick with that weight. That was challenging enough. So on the 4th week, your goal now is to hit that 10 rep. Because last time, on week 3, you only did 9. So now you're at week 4, your goal is to hit 10. And so maybe here in this case, you did hit 10, which is great because that means your body has adjusted and gotten stronger. Right? That 1 rep makes a big, big difference. It's a definitely sign of improvement. Okay, and that's something you want to really gauge week by week, even workout by workout. This is more of a longer gap, but you can do like workout 1, workout 2, workout 3. I mean, there's different ways you can play with it. In some cases, in a week, you may have to deal with the same weight. Maybe a small increment you can go up, but those are just a handful of examples. So I hope that was helpful. And again, if you have any questions regarding this, bring them to the coaching calls. All right. And then last but not least is taking a load off. Deload week. It's simply an active recovery method where you take a short planned period of recovery. You take your training slightly lighter, maybe you work out a little less, and generally you just ease things up. Right? A typical deload week will typically be the last week of your training phase, usually on the third or fourth week. It just depends on, again, how well conditioned you are and your training experience. So either you have two ways you can do this. You can either cut back on your sets or cut back on your load. All right. So typically what I do, I usually cut back on my sets. So if I'm doing 5 sets, I can reduce the sets to 3 sets on my last week. Especially if I've been pushing, I've been hitting my peak for that on that third week and going into the fourth week. I'm like, oh man, I need to cut back. And sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes you can straight up run through the fourth week. But in some cases, you just have to really play it by your feel, how you're feeling, and you may have to reduce the sets, but the intensity is still there. Or you can cut the load. Right, you're at maybe 90% of your work rate, but you're feeling pretty burnt out. Or maybe depending on your event, you want to make sure you want to cut back and not overtrain your body too much, and you cut the load down about to like 120. So the person started at 140, reduce it by being about 20-40% down to 120, and you can go from there. So that way, that last training week of that training phase, the intensity is much lower, and it's doable, and you still feel fresh coming off of that the following week. Okay, and that's what deload week is all about. All right, so that's pretty much sums up everything for this week's video. If you have any questions, of course, post them in the comments below this video. I would love to answer them the best way I can, or write them down, save it for later, and or attend the coaching calls and lay it on us. Right, we'd be glad to help. So thanks. I hope this video proved very beneficial and useful for you guys. Like as always, we're here for you. We'll see you in the next video. All right, peace.